Hello and welcome to Backlinking, the PKM podcast. I have been sick for a few days, so there hasn't been a podcast episode last week, but today we are actually jumping into something really interesting because when you review and talk about software and productivity software, the hardware behind it is actually quite important too. So that is what we are going to talk about because I've just switched from my iPhone. I have an iPhone 13 to an Android phone. This won't be like a review where I talk about things I miss or I talk about like specs and things like that. That isn't what this podcast episode is about. This is a podcast episode, so I can't rely on people actually watching it. But if you are interested, I am going to do more of a review style video and how it has been changing from my iPhone and the Apple ecosystem. But in this podcast, I wanted to talk more broadly about why I've changed, why I have gone away from the Apple ecosystem, why I've chosen the phone I've chosen, and just in general, some ideas around Apple and tech in general. So, more of that today, more like in depth, where I talk about specs, things I miss, show you some of the features I like, dislike, things like that will be in another video. So let's actually start off with talking about, before we do that actually, that will be a video on the channel, not a podcast episode. It will be a full-on video. But now, let's start off with why I've changed. So I've been an Apple fanboy for a long time. Like I have AirPods, I have AirPods Max, I have a Mac, I have iPhone, I have an Apple Watch. I have actually everything that Apple offers. I own. And I'm not here to say that Apple is a terrible company or that my experience has been bad with any of the devices. I will still use my Mac. I'm changing out my AirPods because those are 3 years old now. And 3 years might not sound like a lot, but if you consider the fact that I, on average, listen to music around 7 to 8 thousand minutes each month, it starts to add up. So I am changing those. I am going to at some point change my AirPods Max out too, but I have to do a lot more research before I change that. But the things I've changed now is my phone and also my watch. And one of the main things that I found, so I switched to a Fairphone 6, more about why I ended up there later. But one of the things I found with Apple is that you don't necessarily have that many choices, especially when it comes to the phone. Like you have the iPhone, you have the iPhone Pro and iPhone Max, I think that's what they're called. So, and now we also have the Air, which will probably be out in the next Apple event. So there isn't that many choices in the Android ecosystem. Like you have Samsung, you have Google phones, you have Fairphone, you have OnePlus, you have nothing. There are so many options in the Android world. And it is much easier to change between Android phones than to change between an iPhone and an Android phone. iPhone and Apple is known for their closed ecosystem, which is starting to get better, not because they want to, but because the EU is pushing them to. Um, but the issue I've had is that like I've had an iPhone since 2013 or so, probably a little sooner, and my iPhones haven't changed that much. Like the chipset in these, and also in the Mac has gotten a lot better, which is great. I like that. It is amazing. The issue I have, and this issue came up when I was researching my phones as well, was that I am not trying to 3D render something on my phone. Like I'm doing very basic phone stuff. Don't even watch YouTube videos a lot on my phone. I mainly use it to listen to music, make phone calls, answer a few emails, maybe write a couple of sentences in my note-taking app. That is mainly like what I use a phone for. And the same goes for the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch might have the greatest features, like it could have had every feature under the sun, but in my case, for my use case, for what I was using it for, it was basically a really expensive alarm clock and step counter. Like probably the most expensive alarm clock you can get. That was my use case for the Apple Watch. I changed it to Garmin Vivo Move Sport Hybrid. I think something like that. It is a hybrid watch, which I am currently using. So it looks more like a regular watch, which is important to me since I'm also really into fashion and having an Apple Watch. Like I wanted my steps counted, I wanted the sleep tracking, but I didn't necessarily want to use an Apple Watch at an event or when I was out at a hotel for dinner with my family or friends or with work. But I often ended up using the Apple Watch because I wanted the steps counted, I wanted the sleep tracking at night, so things like that. I could probably have changed my Apple Watch to a regular watch and changed back, but it became inconvenient. So this is much more convenient. It is also much cheaper coming in. I think I paid around 150 USD for this in Norway. So 1,690 Norwegian kroners, which isn't too bad. It is much cheaper. It gives me the things I need, like it counts my steps, it counts my workouts, it gives me an alarm clock. I don't necessarily need it to count things perfectly. I don't need my workouts to be perfectly measured. Like I'm not looking for that. I'm just looking for something simple, a simple smartwatch for everyday use. So that was why I changed to this watch. The reason I changed watches is because Apple Watches do not work with Android phones. So if you change your phone, you have to change the watch as well. And the things I just mentioned is one of the reasons I decided to change, because when you have so few choices and like all of the Apple phones are really good with good chipsets and like good build quality and generally good stuff, like I'm really happy with them. Uh, but I don't need all of the features. Like I need less specs. I don't want to pay for specs that I don't necessarily need, which I think applies to a lot of people. Like a lot of people don't need the newest chips in their phones. They don't need 16 gigs of RAM. Well, probably because of AI, people will need that now. But you kind of get my point. Like my friends, my father, my mother, my sister, they don't necessarily need the newest stuff and the best, like the best chips, the best processors. Like it isn't, it isn't something you need. And with Apple, it feels like you always get that. Like I could probably uh, purchase something from 1 or 2 years prior. Like I could buy the iPhone 14 now instead of the 17, or the 15 instead of the 17, but then you sacrifice a couple of years of software updates. So it is just much easier to buy a cheaper phone that actually works for you and like does all of the things you need but costs a lot less. The same goes for like, I know that the Nothing Phone 3 isn't like the best phone. You are probably overpaying a bit for that one as well, but at least I have the ability to choose between a bunch of phones depending on what I need, and that might change. Like currently I don't need all of the power that an iPhone has, for example. I can get away with a fair phone like this. Uh, but it might change like in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, probably longer than that. I might need more power in my phone. Like things might change. I might work more off of my phone. I might film more off of my phone. Like things might change. And in that case, I still have the options. Like I could go for one of the flagships from Samsung or Google, so I could quickly change to something else. With Apple, like you don't necessarily have the same options. You have the cheaper, like budget iPhone, which I still don't count as a budget phone. So it is a little difficult in the Apple ecosystem because I've had a couple of instances when I didn't have money for a new phone and my phone broke. Like I think it was 3 or 4 years ago when I was a student. Like my phone fell out of my hand, screen cracked, couldn't use the phone. And I couldn't afford a new one, so I had to go back and I had to use like an old iPhone that we had laying around, which was really slow. The battery didn't work properly because I simply couldn't afford buying a new iPhone. And at that point, like it was too hard moving. Like I didn't consider moving to Android. And the moving part hasn't been as easy as I've been hoping for. I struggled with getting all of my apps over to my new Fairphone. I had to do a lot of them manually, which took a bit of time. But as someone who enjoys tinkering with stuff, I actually enjoyed it a little. So it wasn't the worst, but just keep in mind that it can take a little bit of time. And when it comes to the Fairphone, like it isn't the best spec phone out there. The chip inside of this is a little bit older. I in general think that the specs, or not that I think, like objectively, the specs aren't the best in this one. And that is a little bit unfortunate because the whole ethos of Fairphone is that the phone should last you for a long time. Given all of the AI stuff that is happening now, like you might actually need a little bit more processing power, a little bit more RAM inside of your phone. But in general, like for the days I've had this, it hasn't been an issue at all. Like I remember when I was researching Android phones, I started thinking to myself, but this phone, let's just use the Fairphone as an example. Like this Fairphone, it does not have the best camera. And then I opened up my images app on my iPhone, and I only have 12 images on my iPhone. Like I've had this phone for uh, around 3, 4 years now. It only has 12 images. So, do I actually care about the fact that the camera on the Fairphone isn't the best? I actually do not care at all. And these are my personal experiences. As I said, I think a lot of people might enjoy having a better camera, but I go to work, I come home, I sit at my computer, I film these videos, and often at events, family events, or mm, places I'm at, I have either family members or myself bringing a camera, like a really good camera. And that is, again, my personal use case because I have a lot of people in my family that enjoy taking images and videos and things like that. So, um, basically what that means is that it is my use case, and I think that is really important, and that is the point of this whole podcast episode, is that I think we should think a little bit more about what we need from our phones instead of buying the first one. And I decided to go for a Fairphone because, as someone who is in the tech, or who is really into tech and into software and into productivity apps, and I spend a lot of time on AI and things like that, I feel like I should be more conscious about uh, things like my phone and just in general being more eco-friendly, paying more attention to supply chain issues in the tech industry. I think that is a little more important in my case, as someone who is really into this and should be able to find all of the information I need. And I'm not saying that the Fairphone is for everyone. As I said, I could drop down the specs because I don't use my phone that much. But in general, I think we could all benefit from thinking a little bit more about what we need and stop consuming as much. And I am so guilty of consuming much more than I need, like changing phones a lot, changing electronics a lot, buying too many clothes, like things like that. I am so guilty of it, and I feel like as someone who spends most of my time talking about tech, reviewing tech, talking about applications, I think it is much more important that someone like me, for example, pays a little bit more attention to things like that. And that's why I went for the Fairphone. I really like the ethos of the company. I am happy with my Fairphone. I think it's much better than I expected at first. I watched a lot of reviews, but honestly, I am quite happy with it. I will, as I said, do a more in-depth video on this, but I think, like, let's be honest, compared to a lot of the other phones, I overpaid for my Fairphone given the specs, but that is what it costs to pay well across a supply chain. Like, uh, it it simply costs. Sustainability often costs a little bit more, and in my case, that is something I am willing to pay for. For a lot of people, that might not be something they're willing to pay for. I'm not telling people what they should or shouldn't do. I'm just trying to explain my thought process and why I've made the choices I've made. And as I said, like, my opinions might change in the future, but currently it felt like the right choice. And Fairphone isn't perfect, neither is my consumerism, but making a small effort to choose more sustainable felt like an important choice to me at this time. So that's why I ended up with the Fairphone. And in the future, I might change to another Android phone, but I really like the idea of having more options, having more abilities to tinker with stuff. Side loading applications is also great. And there are general benefits. Do I miss things with my iPhone? Not yet. I do miss one thing though. I miss the whole iPhone ecosystem or the whole Apple ecosystem. That is something I miss, but I will probably miss some of my Apple features. That is why I am waiting to make the video on the switching part and the review stuff because I want to use it a lot more for a month or so, because in many cases you don't necessarily find the issues the first couple of weeks because you're just so happy that you bought something new. I am really happy, exceptionally happy with the watch though and the Garmin app, so that is something I'm really happy with, and I will be back at some point with a more review style video where I talk about how it has felt changing from an iPhone to a Fairphone. But I think that covers it for today's video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. I will try to get to them as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching today's or listening to today's podcast episode.